Hi guys, my name's Chet Donath and this is Donath Outdoors. Welcome to the channel. So in this video I just kind of want to go over TSI, which is timber stand improvement, and kind of the effects, kind of the after effects of a forest that's undergone TSI. This is a forest behind me here. We've done TSI in, and it's 10 acres. So it's roughly 6 acres of woodland, so only 6 acres undergone timber stand improvement. The rest is kind of tillable and doesn't have enough trees to be considered a woodland. As you can kind of look behind me and see, we have a lot of larger mature trees. We have a lot of white oaks that are standing, and then we have a lot of smaller trees. We have kind of like a diverse age group of trees. So some of the trees that are still standing are actually have been ring cut, so they are in the process of they've died and they just haven't fallen down yet. We had such a thick timber that if I was to go ahead and knock all the trees completely down, we would have had problems with them hanging up on other trees and causing kind of a lot of danger. So a lot of the trees I opted to just put a ring around them. You break up the bark and the cambium around the tree, and so the tree's no longer to be able to spread nutrients and water up to the top of the tree past that point, and so then it eventually will die. So before I get into like the effects that this forest has actually undergone and kind of what kind of improvements have been made on it, and whether or not I've seen more wildlife, I kind of want to talk about TSI in general. So TSI is timber stand improvement. Timber stand improvement can be subjective, and it can mean a lot of different things, kind of entirely dependent on your goals. So you can have a goal of primarily trying to help the wildlife out. You can have a goal where your top goal is better timber trees, so you can have more higher production or a higher pay out basically of trees that you have here. So you're going to want to keep, in that situation, you'd want to keep your high value timber products, your high value trees, and you want to basically cut out anything else, any trees that are kind of forked or maybe not suitable for logs, making logs and making boards. You want to get those out of there. So in this particular project, on this small acreage that I own, I wanted to have my primary goal as wildlife, and not just deer in particular, which of course I do hunt deer, and it is a big driving force behind a lot of these projects, but I also wanted to do it for furbearers, squirrels, even insects, birds down the line, just improve the quality of the habitat in this particular area, and that was going to be my #1 goal. As a secondary goal, I of course wanted to improve the production of timber. And so whereas let's say 2 trees are together and one is a very good lumber tree and another one is going to be better for wildlife, I would take the one that was better for wildlife and keep it there, and take the one out. So with that being said, I left a lot of trees that were not conducive to making boards with, and those are den trees. So we need habitat for those fur bearers, for those little guys to hide in. And so I left a lot of den trees up. I left a lot of standing dead timber, which in a case where I was just trying to go for like maximum amount of money that I could make per acre, I would get rid of those trees because they're just taking room up in the canopy. And so what we did with this timber stand improvement is we sort of looked at our canopy and kind of considered how many trees do we need to take out of here so that we can take the trees that we do have and we can make them be as healthy as possible and to grow as large as possible. So we ended up cutting a lot of smaller trees. In particular, we cut a lot of hackberries, elms, a lot of northern red cedars, and just trees that weren't necessarily great for wildlife, and they weren't necessarily bad for wildlife, but they weren't as good as things like oaks and hickories, things that are going to produce a lot of mast, a lot of protein for deer and turkey and squirrel. And when you have those prey animals, you're going to obviously have those predators too as well, like raccoons, possums even, and coyotes and foxes. And so I'm kind of going for diversity. I don't necessarily want to just mow everything down and try to pick one species that I really like and try to draw as many of those in as I possibly can, because that can make for a really wonky kind of ecosystem. So I kind of want to make it better for everything that's native to this area. So then now that I've kind of gone over the particular goals that I had for this forest stand, and sort of what, you know, timber stand improvement is for those that may not know. Now I want to kind of go over like this particular area and whether or not I've seen any improvements. So it's been 2 years, as I said before, since we've made the improvements on the timber, and I've made the cuts. Now I still have a lot of cleaning up to do. I have a lot of dead logs that are down, and I've been working on it, but as one person, it's a lot of work and a lot of trees are going down. So I'm working on cleaning up that clutter on the forest floor and getting rid of those dead trees that I did cut down. And I'm trying to sell it for firewood to try to, you know, basically give me some sort of income so I can pour it back into this. And, you know, obviously help pay for the land, pay for the taxes and such, because in the reality, you know, I'm paying for this. And so it is nice to have some you know, some form of income coming in from this, because we'd all like to just, you know, improve habitat and not worry about income and just do what's best for the wildlife. And, you know, but in reality, we as landowners, we have to pay for this, and so having an income is a huge bonus, and sometimes a necessary evil or a necessary bonus that we have to keep doing what we're doing to improve this. So behind me, if you'll kind of notice, I have a lot of stuff that's grown up, a lot of greenery. So if you'd looked 2 years ago, before we did all this, it was a lot of leaves. There was some understory, trees, there was some brush in the trees. It wasn't like a park setting or something like that. There was some brush, but it has just grown exponentially. I mean, I kind of wish that I had some shots from 2 years ago so I could kind of show you guys the drastic difference that it has made. So by letting all that extra light come into the canopy and cutting those stumps off, and so a lot of the stumps I've put Tordon on so they wouldn't come back if I didn't want the species to come back. But a lot of things, when I had to cut, you know, an oak or a hickory or something like that, I don't necessarily hate those trees. I just picked one tree that was more healthy and that was doing better, and I had to choose the lesser tree and take that out. Well, those stumps would actually grow sprouts from them, and that's a lot of what has made this a lot thicker. And deer come by, they love to nibble on that. I've seen a lot of places where they've been nibbling on the buds, and it provides not only food for them, but it also provides a lot of cover. You know, as most people would probably say, if they had to pick what they wanted for a woodland as far as their aesthetics, as far as like what looks good, is going to be basically your huge mature trees, and then the rest is just kind of be like leaves and maybe some like woodland flowers and ferns and stuff that are very low to the ground. But it's just easy to walk through. When we see something like that, we think, man, that's very inviting. It's very easy to walk through. But we don't typically have giant predators or predators in general trying to kill us and eat us. So, you know, we're gonna see something like that, and it's aesthetically pleasing to the eye of most humans. You know, we like to see this place it's easy, and it just looks really nice. Whereas a deer, you know, they walk through an area like that and all they're thinking is they're exposed, and they don't have as much cover. Especially you get a matured buck, they're not going to hang out in places that are wide open and, you know, you can see for a very long ways. And also there's not a lot of browse. They might find a few, you know, flowers on the ground or whatever, some small tiny vegetation here and there in spots, but most of the greenery, and unless, you know, acorns are falling or something like that, they're not going to be able to reach any of these leaves and browse on the top of the canopy where most of your mature trees are going to be growing their branches. So by taking all this out, it looks really rough. It looks kind of like, I don't think I want to really walk through that because there's blackberry brambles and just a lot of underbrush and understory that I have to walk through now. But for a mature deer, or any deer in general, they're gonna feel more safe, and that's gonna provide them with cover, and they're gonna hang out in that. And I've seen the proof of this because I've been putting up trail cameras, and I've owned this property for about 10 years actually, and I would see deer on it, and there would be, you know, deer that would pass through, but they never really just kind of like bedded down in here and stayed in here. And I didn't have like family groups that were here all the time. But now I'm seeing the same two set of family groups, a doe with one has 2 fawns and one has 3 fawns, and I will see them regularly, like on the daily on my cameras. They're living in this area, you know, they're bedded down in this area, they're grazing this area, they're walking around here, you know, every day for hours. And so that's really promising. And just last year alone, between my son and I, we harvested 3 deer just off this 10-acre property, which I haven't harvested 3 deer off this 10-acre property for the prior 8 or whatever years that I owned it. So that's a significant increase in the amount of deer that we're seeing and the amount of deer that we're, able to take off the property. Now, I've seen at least 2 bucks that have traveled in here, and I've seen them consecutive on the cameras. This year in particular, last year during the rut, I had a ton of bucks rolling through here. They weren't living here, I can't say that for a fact, but I would see the bucks, day in and day out for periods of time, and I think that has to do with the rut, and then they would kind of move elsewhere. So the buck habitat and the bucks trying to lure them in, it comes during the rut because we have the does here, but they haven't kind of like settled in here, and that I know of. I can't actually state for a fact that I know that bucks are, bedding down in here, but to be able to see the amount of traffic and the amount of deer that are able to stay in here is very, very promising. And I do have a lot of promise in the future that I will start seeing some mature bucks find this place and move in here. Right now I'm in here a lot and I'm doing a lot of work, so I definitely think that has a lot to do with why, a mature buck maybe doesn't want to be bedded in here all the time. If it's getting jumped, once a week or a couple times a week, which is how much I'm in here, that's not really conducive to its survival, so it's not going to stay in here, right? So lastly, to kind of wrap up this video, I just want to talk about kind of how I went through this process. Okay, so I did a previous video over this entire thing and kind of like went into detail, and you can check that out. And this is in a series called, Small Acreage Paradise, where I take this 10 acres and I kind of try to manipulate it and try to improve it and try to make it better for all wildlife. So if you want to go back and watch those videos and you're interested in this type of stuff and you're doing projects like this, and it might be helpful to check those videos out. But anyway, I can put the link in the description or whatever for you, so you can go to the beginning or watch and pick and choose which one you want to watch. But anyway, just real quick, I just want to go over, I didn't do this, by myself, but you definitely can. If you have a good plan, you can definitely just say, this is what I want to do, these are the goals that I'm going to set, and this is how I'm going to incorporate it, and you can go out and you can do it yourself. What I did is I got with a forester from the Missouri Conservation Department, and he walked me through it. He set it up to have like an actual written plan, and I was actually compensated, and it wasn't very much. If you look at the hourly rate in which I was compensated, it would be pretty sad, pretty low amount for as much work as I've done, but it did help cover some of those costs. Including spray, and from the Tordon that I used to spray the trees, chainsaw fuel and oil, bar oil, going through chains, having chains sharpened, etc. And just kind of just cover just a little bit of that. But with that as a caveat, it was actually just a little bit more work as well, because what they wanted me to do is they wanted me to take down a lot of the invasive species. For instance, just to throw a couple out that I had on this particular property, any calorie pears that I found, I was to chop down and to spray. Any multiflora rose bushes, I was to also chop down and spray, as well as any honeysuckle. But actually this spot, luckily we don't have honeysuckle yet, and I hope to not get it. Is as most people know, very invasive, and it's just not good to have on your land. So I had a lot more work, but it was conducive to my goals, because having those types of things, they kind of take out the good stuff, the good native stuff, and they can spread. And the last thing that I want on my property is just 6-acre woodland of just multiflora roses, underbrush or understory, because that's hard to walk through, and it just basically is just a monocrop or a monoculture, and we don't want that here. I wanted the diversity. I wanted to get rid of those. I didn't want that invasive stuff on my property, and I wanted to have the native stuff for the native wildlife that were here. So for me, it was a good way to go, because not only did I meet my own goals that I wanted to do anyway, but I was able to be compensated for the time that I spent doing it. So if you want to do it by yourself and you want to stay away from having that, you certainly can. But if you are in Missouri, and every state has its own sort of deal and its own wildlife or conservation section that you can go through. It's good for the landowners, and it's also good for the wildlife in general of that particular state, and that's why they do it, and use that money and put it towards that. So anyway, guys, I hope that this helped you if you were kind of considering TSI or trying to look into it, or just trying to look for ways to improve your habitat or your land. For me, this has been crucial as kind of like this first step of just trying to change the landscape and draw deer in as much as possible. And then now I can start kind of doing the little stuff in between to help even improve any more. So this has been a huge success in my book, and for helping me achieve my goals. So hopefully it's helped you guys if you were considering it or whatever. Anyway, make sure you hit the subscribe if you want to see this type of stuff again. We'll be having some hunts. September is here, and September 15, Missouri opener comes, and so I'm a one-man show as of now, so all my hunts are kind of like, I film my own hunts for the most part. I film, you know, everything myself. I do all my own B-roll, and I edit all the same, and I'm a full-time firefighter, a career firefighter, so I don't have a whole bunch of time to throw out videos, but I try to throw out videos when I can, and if you want to see them, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Anyway, guys, thank you for taking your time to watch this whole video, and I will see you next time.